Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Dove Valley Deep Diver special. We hope that you guys are having a wonderful day, no matter what time of day that you are listening to this. With these Dove Valley Deep Diver specials, obviously, we've done multiples of these by now. You should kind of have that idea of how things are going. Joining me with this is Lance Sanderson, who may not always be joining me, but is most likely the one who will be joining me for these. And we've talked about multiple things over the past couple of weeks, but regular season is coming up, and obviously everybody is ready for a winning season. It was mind-boggling to me today, Lance, before we get into this conversation of what young Broncos need to step up. I was writing up an article for MileHighHuddle.com, and I was looking through it. From 1970 to 2016, they had 9 losing seasons.
Yep.
9.
Yep.
They have almost matched that. Hopefully that comes to an end. This losing streak comes to an end. We are able to field a competitive team, a consistently competitive team, not a team that's relying on a historic defensive turnover margin as we saw last year. As great as that was, it's not easily replicated, as obviously that was historic. But in order to get this, this team right on track, we need young guys to step up, young Broncos to step up. Obviously, we're not going to be talking about veterans, even though there are plenty of veterans who do need to step up. Young guys within, 2-3 years of being drafted that are on the cusp of greatness or are trending in the wrong way that need to improve. Whatever the case may be, they need to step up. Mm-hmm. We're each going to talk about one guy on offense, one guy on defense. So 4 total players here. And Lance, starting with you, who's your guy on offense that needs to step up?
Quite honestly, it's the one position battle that's not really decided right now, outside of the quarterback position. Obviously, with Bo Nix, I'm going to date us a little bit, being named the starter, which we all knew was going to happen anyways. It doesn't really matter. The one position battle on offense that wasn't actually decided in terms of who the starter was going to be is Luke Wattenberg at the center position. Young player, 3rd season this year out of Washington. He has really stepped up and grown as a run blocker specifically. His pass protection has been nice. The communication on the offensive line, at least for the first team unit, has been relatively solid. It seems like he's doing a good job getting everybody set up, lined up in the right position, identifying assignments, and just working well in terms of pass protection. But the big thing that like I said, the big thing he stepped up with is that run blocking. But we're talking about a 3rd-year player being a first-time starter on an offensive line that last season saw every starter except for Mike McGlinchey play all 17 games, and every one of them played over 1,000 snaps except McGlinchey, who was right at 950 snaps last year. You're replacing a guy, a 4-year starter, and Lloyd Cushenberry, and you have to step in and protect a rookie quarterback and be the guy that adjusts the offensive line and is the pivot man, the center of attention on the offensive line. This is a big task for him, especially with the growth and development that he needed coming out of Washington. The running game deficiencies before in his previous seasons has been so detrimental that he was barely even kept on the roster last season. Now he's stepping into a starting role. He has to step up this year.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a guy who wasn't everyone's expected starter coming into this.
No.
I think at this point, he is all but named the starter. He is very clearly the number 1 guy. Yep. Sam Mustipher has taken over the number 2 spot. And I think the battle is now for who's the backup center behind Wattenberg. But it was reported almost after like the first week of practice and training camp that Luke Wattenberg was starting to walk away with this job, even though it's not unpadded practice and offensive linemen are limited with what they can do. It was the football IQ of it that was being highlighted as to why Wattenberg was showing out so much better than Mustipher or Forsyth were.
Yep.
And that, for me, it's a great sign for him. But I am with you. I mean, Lloyd Cushenberry wasn't, the best center of all time or anything. He really came along his final year in Denver last year after a couple really bad years that led to the Broncos eyeing multiple centers to replace him, including Luke Wattenberg, including Alex Forsyth, including other guys that they were looking at trading up in the NFL draft to get and failed to get. So they were looking at replacing him, and then he had a great year, ended up being, at the time when he got his contract, the highest paid center, which was about a month after before another center ended up being higher paid than him with a extension by his team. But filling in Lloyd Cushenberry's shoes are not going to be easy because
No.
of I don't want to say consistency, but the 4 years of starting time and starting the majority of the games for that. He did miss some time with an injury there for a while,
Yep.
but he started most of those games. So you definitely need him to step up and be this guy at the middle that can take some pressure off your guards, who can then help take pressure off your tackles, and all of that is helping taking pressure off your quarterback, your rookie starting quarterback, first rookie starting quarterback for the Broncos since Sean Elway, and first rookie quarterback to start for the Broncos that was actually drafted by the Denver Broncos, which is one of my favorite facts. Anyways, for me, staying on the opposite side of the ball is another guy who can help take a lot of pressure off that rookie quarterback, and Greg Dulcich. Now, Greg Dulcich gets a bad rap because injuries stink, especially injuries that are, I don't want to say, for lack of a better way to put it, those invisible injuries, the ones where they're not in the cast, the ones where it's like, okay, they can still walk fine, the hamstring injuries, the foot injuries, where things just feel wrong and you're not able to move right. Because we saw as a rookie how much of a difference maker Greg Dulcich is when he's on the field.
Yep.
And so far this preseason, we are seeing how much of a difference maker he can be, and that not a single tight end on this roster can replace what he is bringing.
Yep.
Greg Dulcich needs to step up, but not with his play. He needs to step up with being available and staying healthy. And he saw some specialists to, change the way he runs to help protect his hamstrings a little bit, help protect his feet. He's got to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing for him. So he's just got to step up, improve improve his body type a little bit to be reliable with seeing the field. That, for me, that's where you need him to step up at the most, because we can see it with his play that he can be a difference maker for this offense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. And I want to ask you a quick question, just a quick pithy response here on this. Talking about Greg Dulcich and his body type, you got to understand what he was as a player, not only at UCLA, but back in college in California. He was a wide receiver. He added a bunch of weight, not only in college at UCLA, but then added even more weight at the NFL level. How much does that put strain on his lower extremities, that the ability to still continue to move? When you see him run, it is very special. A guy that size should not be able to move that well. How much does that added body weight, that change to his body type, really affect those lower extremities, the hamstrings, the feet, and stuff like that, where it is that detriment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're adding more weight, and I don't want to say if you're not doing it the best way, because I'm sure he was doing it in the right way, but if your body's not fully adjusted to it, it's obviously going to add more strain. I mean, not to get into the side of it, but I'm seeing the reverse effects of it, of some of the strain on my body from losing weight. And I do feel it, and I feel better in a lot of ways, but there are some ways that it's like, okay, I'm not used to this. And so when I do certain things, it leads to me hurting, because I'm used to, like standing up, for instance, from a seated position. I'm used to lifting more weight for it. So yeah, when you're playing football and you're adding more weight and all that, it's going to create issues for it, especially on your lower half. So yeah, I'm not surprised that there were issues with Greg Dulcich. I'm a little surprised at how long it took for him to get it figured out. But I'm glad that it seems that things are getting figured out. Obviously, we still have to wait and see how things last, but there have been positive signs. Now we got to flip over to the defensive side of the ball here, and starting with you again on this. Who's your young guy on the defensive side of the ball that needs to step up?
Quite honestly, it's the one that we saw step up the most last season after Kareem Jackson had all of his suspensions and everything was going on in that safety room. It's PJ Loock. The Broncos reinvested in PJ Loock. They gave him a sizable contract for a young player of his status in the NFL. I believe it's like 1 year, $4 million, something like that. It wasn't necessarily a huge deal, but they invested in him as the starter. He showed the ability to start and play at a high level last year. And like I said, was one of the biggest shining stars, one of the biggest revelations for this Broncos defense. But now you are the guy. Justin Simmons is now playing for the Atlanta Falcons. You've got Brandon Jones, who has not seen the field this preseason because of injury. You also have Caden Stearns was waived a couple of weeks ago. So now it's PJ Locke as the elder statesman in this Broncos secondary at the safety position. And while I do like the flashes, the highlight plays that he does bring at a very high level, I want to see more consistency. I really need to see him take another step up, be the deciding leader of this locker room, deciding leader of this secondary, and just continue to show the growth that we saw from him last year, which really brings like a great point in the development of this secondary overall.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there with one word: consistency.
Yep.
Last year, as much growth as he showed, consistency wasn't always there.
Yep.
He had high highs, but low lows as well.
Very low lows. Yep.
And we're seeing that this preseason. We just need him to be more consistent. Obviously, you're not going to replace Justin Simmons.
No.
And I don't want to say he's trying to, because obviously I don't know, but there are times so far this preseason where it looked like he was just trying to do just a little bit too much, especially against the run. Just do your job, trust your teammates around you to do their job, and then go from there, because the consistency can be huge for making you a good and obviously reliable safety in the NFL. Because as great as Justin Simmons was, he also wasn't the most consistent player out there, especially against the run.
Yep.
He was very hit or miss for it. He made up for it with consistency and excellence in coverage, but PJ Locke doesn't. So I am with you that he needs to step up. It hasn't been great. He's been, according to Pro Football Focus, he's been the worst safety for the Broncos with their overall defensive grade this year or this preseason. And you got to see more. He's been one of the worst in the NFL in general, according to Pro Football Focus's grade. So you definitely got to see more, especially with the guy who is as you said, he is the most experienced Bronco safety in the room. Now, I believe Brandon Jones has been in the NFL a year longer. I might be mistaken on that, but I'm talking about he's been with the Broncos. He's been with the system, whereas the rest of the guys, they don't. JL Skinner's entering his second year. I believe Keidron Smith is entering his second year. Tanner McAllister is kind of more of a versatile defensive back. He's in his second year. Devin Key actually, I think, is in the NFL 4 years, which I think is the same amount of time as PJ Locke. So he's been with the Broncos basically his whole career. He's spent last year as a key piece on this defense in Vance Joseph's defensive scheme. He brings the most experience within what they are going to be doing this year. You got to see him step up. And now, with that said, after a little rant there, going to my defensive guy who's got to step up, the guy that I want to spend the most time talking about, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to, Nick Bonitto. And I think it's really self-explanatory that we don't have to go into it. This is a guy who was the first pick the Broncos made 2 years ago. He's showed improvements this preseason. He showed a lot better against the run, which was one of the biggest issues each of the last 2 seasons. We just got to see him step up more, especially as a pass rusher. And we're seeing it again, also seeing that this preseason. He's beating his tackles. He's getting to the quarterback. He's not getting all these unblocked pressures like he did last year, which led to a lot of hype around him. He's actually winning consistently. And so I don't think he's going to see a lot of time this year. All right, let me rephrase that. He's the third rusher. I don't think he's going to be a starter, barring injury, because Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper have that up. But we need to see him step up, because he can be a starter next year, as both Browning and Cooper are set to be free agents after this year. So Bonitto stepping up gives the Broncos more options with that. And of course, the more depth you have at the edge rusher position, 10 times out of 10, your defense is going to be better. If the depth steps up at the edge, it just helps everybody, because that pressure that you can generate on the quarterback.
I think the one thing with Nick Bonitto that we've seen so far this preseason, not only is he better against the run, the pass rush ability that he brings, he's such a perfect pair for Jonah Ellis on the opposite side. They do so well in conjunction with their pass rush repertoires and their ability to get after the quarterback. Jonah Ellis has been playing like a man with his hair on fire. Has it been perfect? No, absolutely not. There's still a lot of growth, especially as a run defender. But Nick Bonitto offers that perfect complement to Jonah Ellis on the opposite side. And I do want to go to the run defense here. I think the improvements that he has shown have been tremendous this year. His play strength is better. His technical ability is better. His identification of what's going on, his football IQ is a lot better. He's making plays that aren't just him guessing, shooting a gap, and trying to make a play on the football on the ball carrier. He is holding up at the point of attack, at least way better than what it was before. But he's holding up at the point of attack, setting firmer edges. I'll say that way. But you're not seeing him washed out of plays. You're not seeing the inconsistent flashes where it's like big time play here and then just terrible, horrible play on the backside of that. I think that the Broncos have unearthed a quality gem as a rotational pass rusher. But as a second round pick, you need to see more from him this year. So I'm right there with you. Nick Bonito needs to step up even further than he has so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty easy to kind of highlight it with what you're expecting out of picks. And this goes into that with what you just said there. First round picks, you want to be excellent starters. You want to be among the best at their position. Second round picks, you want to be good to high quality starters, not necessarily the best at their position. Third round picks, you want to be starters. And then after that, you're just looking for what you can get with the third round picks, because those are mostly made with special teams in mind or developmental projects that you want to hope to develop into a quality starter or a quality backup. And so Nick Bonito you need him to be a good starter in this in this league. And this is year 3 for him. And so far, all he has shown is that he can be a good quality backup. And it's not all his fault. Like, it's not because his only because of his play or anything. It's because of what the position has looked like. But you definitely got to see more out of him, because he can have such a huge effect on the Broncos record this year, as he did last year. I mean, a couple plays he made led to a win almost directly. So, I mean, one of them did directly lead to it.
The Chicago game.
Got to see him step up. You got to see all these young guys step up. You got to see a lot of players step up, not just these young guys. There are some veterans as well. A couple offensive linemen, McGlinchey, Ben Powers, among them, Garrett Bowles even. A lot of guys you got to see step up. But that's going to do it for us for this time. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you guys have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. If they're good enough questions or great questions that really intrigue us, that we want to sit there and do a video on, we'll do a video and we'll like flash your name on the screen or something like that, or have your name have the question on the screen. We'll do something. But thank you guys for tuning in. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Share, all these ways to help us out. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We hope you guys enjoy these videos. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful week. And as always, go Broncos.